Hello and welcome once again. Another Uposatha, holy Buddhist holy day, has passed, being the new moon of October. And now we're into the month of November, meaning I have been in Sri Lanka now for over a year, enjoying the hospitality of this beautiful country and these very devout upasakas and upasikas, Buddhist people who hold in the highest esteem and respect the teachings of the Buddha, the Dharma, and that can be seen very evidently on the occasions I have to travel around or coming and going from the country, as I do sometimes. You are given great respect by all the people you meet and deal with. Them understanding that what you're practicing is in the interests of the furtherance of the sasana, the Buddha sasana, this religion, to keep it going. It is very important. We have in these modern times, as well as it was important in the time of the Buddha himself, to have the fourfold assembly in place. That is, Buddhist monks, Buddhist nuns, lay men and lay women, bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, upasikas and upasikas. They are like the four legs of a table, the structure of which, without one, would be unstable. And that being present here in Sri Lanka makes it a very suitable place for a bhikkhu to live. And I hope to continue to stay here for the foreseeable future. We ask ourselves through reflection at this time, every 15 days, the full moon, the new moon, the Uposatha days, how well have we been spending our time? Have we been practicing, keeping sila, the moral precepts, putting some time aside for meditation each day? And by this, developing wholesome mind states and reducing unwholesome mind states. The threefold training: sila, moral virtue, samadhi, meditation, and panya, wisdom. And the Sangha is present here, and even in non-Buddhist countries in the West these days, both online and in physical form, for people to go and seek support in this endeavour, in this intention of practice, from those that are doing it full-time, monks or nuns, or online, if it isn't so readily available to you. So this is how we work and live harmoniously together, practicing to the same end, to be free from suffering in this lifetime. And the first comment I come to here is, can you translate the original scripture from Gautama wrote in Pali? If not, then you have probably been lied to about what Gautama really taught. You need to find the person who can translate it. They will tell you the truth. Good luck. So I'm not sure if that is an admonishment, a reprimand, an assumption, but I'm very fortunate that, although I personally cannot translate the original Pali canon, Pali scriptures, I know enough Pali words to get by, but I'm very fortunate that I have many teachers, some of whom are Pali scholars, whom have studied the Pali language, the original scriptures, have translated the original scriptures. In fact, the lineage I'm from and into which I was ordained in India, the founder, Venerable Acharya Buddharakkhita, is his translation of the well-known Dharmapada is one of the most well-known and popular and possibly accurate, but who's to say, translations that there is. So I come from a long lineage of Pali scholars in that respect, whom I have the support and encouragement from. However, Gautama, to give Gautama his full title or name, Siddhartha Gautama of the Sakyamuni tribe, whom was living in Kapilavastu, northeast India, he did not write the Pali Canon or down any of his teachings, and most likely did not speak either Pali, which is the adopted Southern schools tradition, language, old language for the teachings of the Dharma, nor did he probably speak Sanskrit, which is the Northern schools, chosen language for these Dharma teachings. And these accounts of the Dharma, the words of the Buddha, were written down some 300 years after the time of the Buddha, but in the interim period handed down verbally from one monk to another and transferred and given to lay people before them finally being written down in any language. But the likelihood of the Buddha speaking Pali himself rather than some other more local dialect, which even to this day, there are 26 languages in India. They don't just speak Hindi. There's Hindi, English, and 26 mother tongues in different states for people's native states, which are as big as some countries. So what the Buddha, his language actually was, is up for debate to some extent, although it would have been similar, and he didn't write these teachings down. So if you want to know the truth, because I don't think I have been lied to, we are fortunate to have many Pali scholars and many translations, and the translations all vary. And it isn't necessarily so that any of them are correct or incorrect. They're just people's ideas. However, I don't get too mixed up in the semantics of each and every Pali word and its translation. Suffice to know, anicca is roughly translated as impermanence, dukkha, suffering or unsatisfactoriness, anatta, not self. Then there are so many other Pali words we come to use and know, some of which are more appropriately used just on their own, as more descriptive of the action they're describing. Samadhi, for instance, really does reflect, is the only word I need for what we translate as meditation or concentration or many other words. Samadhi is enough. I don't retranslate it in my mind. Samadhi is samadhi, as is jhana, and so on and so forth. We understand that Siddhartha Gautama of the Kapilavastu tribe, who then became the Buddha, which means awakened one, giving us the Dharma, which was subsequently written down, the core and essential essence and content of the content of his teachings, from an amalgamation of all of those varied translations. Finding the common denominator, the commonality in them all, is a good indication of what the Buddha actually said. And it is from that that we can see clearly and take the core teachings of Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, if you've never picked up a sutta or read Pali or heard Pali, but you fully and competently understand the Four Noble Truths, and you are practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, you can attain to enlightenment. Now, the other way it is thought, and I think especially here in Sri Lanka and possibly in Myanmar, Burma, that one can become enlightened is through a gaining of intellectual understanding, knowledge, and on an intellectual basis, through learning. You can't see this, but I've got lots of canine action going on. And yes, that is exercising the mind, expanding the mind, developing concentration, mindfulness, and skills and understanding of what the Buddha taught. But it isn't what the Buddha practiced. It's writing about what the Buddha practiced. And he asks us not to believe, so whether you're being lied to or not to believe anyone, but to practice and see for yourself, find your own results in liberation, leading you towards enlightenment. Not even to believe the Buddha's word, but to take what he says, put it into practice, and see for yourself, as we repeat in the chanting each and every day on the reflections of the Dharma. So yes, it is common to, I think in some places, to think there are various routes to enlightenment, and one is you're a monk and you study the Pali canon and you develop huge skills of recitation of the suttas and understanding of what they mean. Without actually practicing necessarily meditation, of course keeping sila, moral virtue, but with all of that activity, intellectual activity of the mind, the time to actually sit in samadhi is going to be limited, of course. And at your demise, or even earlier than that, as you age, as you get sick, as you die, which is an inevitability, your faculties of, your cognivity, your faculties of memory will diminish. And more so if you have an illness, a dementia-related illness like Alzheimer's, something like this. All you have learned and all you have gained through intellectual study will be gone like that. And you will have no tools or capacity to assist you towards enlightenment. It's gone. But when you develop the skills through the practice of keeping sila and through meditation, developing qualities of loving kindness, metta, of compassion, karuna, of mudita, of joy for others, mudita, and of equanimity, upekkha. These are qualities you develop through the practice, and yes, through the understanding of various translations of the sutras within yourself that remain, whatever the state of your intellectual thinking brain's abilities or physical body's condition, however much they deteriorate, even up to and after their end, your so-called death, those qualities remain in place because they're not tangible items of learning that you can be tested upon. Do you remember how to love? Do you remember how to have compassion? No. You simply have a capacity, a quality within you to love, a capacity, a quality within you to have compassion, as there is with joy for others and with equanimity. These are qualities we develop, among others, like generosity, truthfulness, energy, concentration, mindfulness throughout our practice, throughout our many lives, our many existences. But what doesn't transfer from life to life is learning by rote. So however skilled it is and useful it is to know the sutras cover to cover, word for word, in Pali, in your mother tongue, that is for only this time, and this time is very limited. And how well have we been spending this time? Something I reflect upon each and every Uposatha. If we have been spending this time practicing meditation and maintaining mindfulness for most of our waking hours, so in the case of a monk, how long does a monk meditate, practice mindfulness? 20 hours. We should sleep about 4 hours. The other 20 hours are activities which are all conducted mindfully. Sati sampajana, mindfulness in everything we're doing. And within those hours, many hours, 6 to 9 hours of sitting in formal meditation, samadhi. But as lay people with not so much time available and probably requiring more sleep, you can still, throughout all of your daily activities, practice mindfulness. So I have to say that the comment is not reasonable to suggest that anybody who cannot translate the Pali canon for themselves has a misunderstanding of the Dharma, to put it more politely. Because there are many arahants, and have been arahants, who cannot translate the Pali canon for themselves, who have attained to the highest level of enlightenment without that intellectual ability. So, I don't need good luck, but thank you anyway. I hope my determination, adhitthana, a Pali word, a quality we develop of being able to make a determination and stick to it, I hope that determination is sufficient to continue to assist my progress on the path happily towards Nibbana, with the support and assistance of all those, and yourselves, lay people, that I and other members of the Sangha have behind them and amongst them. How are you? I'm very well, thank you. I'm very happy. I often replay past events countless times in my head or memory, mostly my past deeds, achievements and speech. Only sometimes do I remember what others have said to me. Any advice? Be happy and stay well. So, people say a lot to us all of the time, and it isn't necessary for us to remember everything. If it's useful, then it's worth remembering, and you probably will. If it's not, then I wouldn't worry about it. With regards to you going over and over again your own actions of body, speech and mind, in terms of reflection, that is not a bad thing. If you're proliferating going over and over a past event, replaying it, that is unnecessary and not reflection. It is what we call papancha, it's overthinking, and it can be stopped in its tracks by replacing the thought with something else. So directing your mind towards the Dharma, listening to a Dharma talk, for instance, or reading some suttas, or chanting, or just practicing meditation. When you're proficient enough at it and confident in your meditation, you will be able to sit and bring your conscious awareness to your meditation object, and all of those thoughts will go by the way, and you will just remain and become absorbed in samadhi. But until then, use distraction methods of a wholesome nature, a skillful use of your mind, to direct your mind towards the Dharma rather than thinking about past events. But don't consider all reflection of your actions of body, speech and mind hitherto, what you've done in the past, as bad, because we need to reflect, spend a little time each day on that kind of reflection in order to see how we're doing, how those actions of body, speech and mind are improving, slowly but surely, as we practice with time. And a good way to keep this from interfering with your life is to compartmentalize. So say, for instance, you meditate every evening at 6 o'clock in the evening. Take maybe an extra 15 minutes, and from 5:45, just sit down and take 10 minutes once you've made yourself comfortable, just to reflect on all of your actions of body, speech and mind during the last 24 hours. Just marking them positive or negative, and making a short list of how you can improve in the next, a determination, an adhitthana, how you can improve over the next 24 hours in those areas, and then put it down, put it away, forget about it, and then begin your meditation. Compartmentalize. Much the same with other areas in our lives. I've taken now a specific, more or less, time of day only that I will sit with my cup of coffee, read your comments, or at least say I'm going to read your comments online and talk about it in the future, just quickly, reply and read and reply to your emails just quickly, all within the same short period of time each day at around this time, 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and not to look at the phone at any other time for another 24 hours every day. And that is, I've always done that since I've been a monk, but I did for a little while start, when I was getting more and more comments and more emails, looking a little bit more often than that. And all that did was encourage, not that I want comments, it's great to have comments, but I would get into more of a conversational flow of reply. Whereas if you compartmentalize your actions of body, speech and mind into appropriate time slots, you really do tidy up the rest of the day, where you don't have to be thinking. It also means, without looking at the phone until after I've done all of my morning activities, going on Pindapart, having my meal, then clearing up after that, washing my bowl and maybe cleaning robes or something like that. I'm not thinking ahead about questions I may have seen or comments I may have seen. I'm mindfully carrying out my day-to-day activities without clutter in my mind. Then I pick up the phone, look at the comments, look at the emails, and then immediately sit down and, as we are now, talk. After which I have no contact with this until the same time tomorrow. And that keeps your mind, you can use other things you have to do in your day, work for instance, to practice some form of compartmentalization, which is mindfulness in itself, or freeing up the mind for more clear mindfulness throughout your other daily activities. So I hope that that helps with that. I digressed a little, but it was kind of relevant, I think. I'm just curious in asking, what temple do you stay at, and how does one from an English-speaking country go to Thailand and just become a monk, out of curiosity? So maybe watch the video there on this channel, How I Became a Monk, and Why Not, I think it's called. There's two. If you put in How to Become a Monk, two come up. They're very old now, so I'm not sure whether I should maybe, that's a very frequently asked question, so I should perhaps make a new video about how to become a monk. But the simple answer is, it's not that easy as you're suggesting there. You are just saying you're curious and asking what temple do I stay at. At the moment, no, I don't stay at a temple here in Sri Lanka. My temple is in South India, in Bangalore. But I'm staying alone in an empty building, which has been just made sufficiently habitable for me to live, where I've been for this last year here in Sri Lanka, but supported by the lay people in the local village and nearby town, as well as you whom watch these videos and talks and correspond with me, which is as much of a support and in terms of language, the only conversation I am able to have, because I'm not in Thailand, I'm in Sri Lanka. I don't speak Sinhalese. And I don't really know anyone here that they speak English, but how do I put it, tourist English. You know, where is a restaurant? What's the weather doing? How to get a bus or a tuk-tuk? The kind of conversation that monks or nuns, conversations they don't have. Practicing noble silence, we only really discuss the Dharma. And certainly you would require a very, very good knowledge of a language to discuss the Dharma, other than discussing the Dharma in your own mother tongue, which is always to be recommended. Listen to a teacher whom is speaking their own mother tongue when they're teaching or talking about the Dharma. Because if they're having to translate and find words in a foreign language, it's hard enough to explain. And there are many monks or nuns whom speak all kinds of different languages these days available online. So we don't any longer have to go and sit and listen to, as I did for many years, hours and hours of Dharma talks in Thai, or Dharma talks that were then subsequently translated and therefore not coming directly to you firsthand from the teacher. It was more valuable listening to them in Thai, a language I didn't understand, and getting the feel for the talk than it was to hear the English translation, which didn't have that feel. So this is no longer necessary with the wonders of the internet as it is. So how do you go from an English-speaking country to Thailand, or let's say any country? Well, you don't. You start in your own country. I mean, I started in a monastery in the UK to learn and study, and then I went to India to explore other traditions. Then I just visited Thailand, and you know, to become a monk, it's going to take a minimum of living in a monastery full-time, 2 to 3 years, and then the ordination process another 2 to 3 years. And when fully ordained, you remain for another 5 years in your monastery before you're out and about or practicing completely alone. Even now, I'm not completely alone. I'm supported by my Sangha back in India. But this has been nearly 10 years now that I've been doing this. So it's not just like that. It may seem just like that if you look at some videos, but there are places I think that cater for kind of a tourism version of Buddhism, where people can go and take temporary ordination in various countries and experience the life as a monk for a little while. It's usually just the Pabaja ordination, so the first stage of ordination as opposed to higher ordination, but you are living the life of a monk for a short while, and they have language support in those sort of places. But if you want to go and ordain in the Thai forest tradition, there is now in Thailand, or has been for many decades, English-speaking Thai forest monastery. But I ordained in India, where they did speak English, because in India, in most large institutions, they will use, because people come from far and wide with all of the different languages, they have 2 common languages, Hindi and English. So there's usually someone who can speak good English in those places. But it isn't really about speaking. We're not required to speak. I mean, I have no day-to-day conversations at all here. It's not necessary. I can mime if I need a lift or need something fixing or something doing that I need to do that I can't do myself. People soon can work out what you mean. But I'm not sitting around chatting other than here and now. This is my chat time, which I very much enjoy, and appreciate all your comments and questions, which give me the opportunity to do this. Compartmentalized within this 40 to 50 minutes or an hour sometimes if I get very carried away and a little over, each and every day. Well, not every day. I have a break. It's a few days a week, yes? Just become a monk. So there we go. I hope that answers it. But watch that other video and you'll see the long drawn-out process, or hear it. What is your view, stroke experience, of asking the universe, the Dharma, etc., for help in times of need? Well, I don't have any real experience of that or a view on that subject because, well, the Dharma is not the universe. It is in some sense. The Dharma is two words. The Dharma, as in the teachings of the Buddha, the words of the Buddha, our scriptures, and that I can ask any question of. Oh, I'm in this situation, what do I do? Well, I can just really reflect on the Noble Eightfold Path. That is the answer to all questions. Within it, there is wisdom, developing right view, which is where we know the Four Noble Truths, the three characteristics of existence, and understand those. By that understanding, you have right view, which is that all things are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and out of our control. And the Four Noble Truths, the suffering, cause of suffering, end of suffering, and the Noble Eightfold Path leading to the end of suffering, is the answer to all of your questions. So I ask the Dharma in that sense of the word, the teachings of the Buddha, many questions as they arise. But it isn't asking an external force or magical power for assistance. It is showing me how to help myself. That is the Dharma in terms of the teachings. But all things are Dharma, as in the Dharma, the equivalent meaning of being nature, which you could relate to the universe, which is of course the entirety of nature as we experience it, as is just there. All things are Dharma. But we see all things Dharma as anicca, dukkha, anatta, and we see all things Dharma as just that, phenomena, things we are seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and then what we think about. I don't ask the universe, the mountains, the trees, the moon or the sun to assist me in any way. But I can look at maybe the way animals move around mindfully, cautiously, perhaps more so than us human beings, and learn a lot from nature in that respect. But that isn't asking the universe. So right view is not to be asking the universe in the sense that I think you're referring to. I mean, that isn't to say that if you are practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, and what you want is to become enlightened, or what you want is to develop more loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, or even the 7 factors of enlightenment, if that is what you're practicing for, by practicing, you will manifest, if you like that word, manifest those qualities. They will be manifested. You will get fed. If you live as a monk, even in the West, I've visited England only briefly in this time, but I've been to non-Buddhist countries, I still get fed. People see I'm a samana of some kind of sorts, and probably walking around with a bowl think that that's something they can put food into. So things will come your way. If you are not creating disturbance, but living in harmony with the society in which you are. as well as within nature. To become a Buddhist monk in Sri Lanka, did you need to become a citizen? No. So I'm not of any of the Sri Lankan Nikayas, sects, is how you describe that, I suppose. I was ordained in India. So, although ultimately it came from Sri Lanka, the Mahabodhi Society of India was founded by a Sri Lankan, but that's another long story. So I'm an Indian Buddhist monk, not a Sri Lankan Buddhist monk. And living here in Sri Lanka, I don't become a citizen because I wouldn't qualify to become a citizen. Because being an alms mendicant, having no money, having no income or support, you don't have probably, never looked into it, what the necessary requirements to become a citizen. With a long period of time, you can perhaps be afforded certain concessions by immigration departments if you are known to be practicing. For instance, if you're in Thailand, they have a specific visa system for foreign monks, and also many foreign monks who have lived in Thailand for many years and decades have been given, out of respect, say Thai citizenship. Now that isn't common here in Sri Lanka because foreign monks are not common here in Sri Lanka. There are very few, in fact. Even now, I think you can count them on maybe one hand, maybe two hands at the very most, foreign monks living here in Sri Lanka, pretty much full time, say a year or more. So they don't have really the system there to deal with that just yet. But it doesn't make any difference really. So I have just an ordinary visitor's visa, tourist visa. I was given I did go to the Buddhasasana, which is the what do you call it? The Ministry of Buddhism, you could call it, I suppose, in English, but it's called the Buddhasasana in Colombo, the capital, and spoke to the people there and had my sort of interview and completed all the forms, got all the references from the various government authorities back in the UK, and got a certificate from them for me to have a monk's, not a monk's visa, but it's a sort of a monk in learning, an educational kind of permit, so I don't have to be relying on a tourist visa. I did get one of those right at the outset, but it requires me to be living in a monastery, in a system of education, and working within what they have or operating within a kind of a bureaucratic sideline to what I consider to be the practice of Buddhism. So for simplicity, I just stick to my ordinary, I've got a 5-year tourist visa, and well, what more do I need? That's good enough for me. I have a 5-year tourist visa for Sri Lanka and a 5-year tourist visa for India. And they allow me to go back and forth between the two, which is a relatively short journey, relatively inexpensive, and considering my cost of living is zero, my overall upkeep financially is still very, very low indeed by comparison to any other existence. I've got an idea. Oh dear. Let me look at the time. Have I got time for this one? Why don't the Sangha give me and some of the lads a few million of all of the millions they have, and we can build our own monastery for us lads here? And I did glance down at one of the replies, which was quite right. You should perhaps go to a different church, religion, with such a request, because monks, of course, don't have money, and neither does the Sangha. The Buddhasasana I referred to is a ministry, a government ministry, and of course all monasteries, temples require money to operate. As a monk, I don't use money, but there are incidental costs of living, as I just discussed, flights or visas or maybe a hospital visit or something like that. But that is handled by lay people. Where you see temples and you see salas, monasteries, stupas, these are all financed and constructed. They may be organized by the Sangha, by the monks, and the monks even may work on the construction of such places. But the financial side is all handled by lay people, not monks and nuns, by upasakas and upasikas, or by these days organizations, so NGOs or charities, such and such. So still, the monks are operating. I don't own this place, and I don't pay for this place, but it needed to have work done on it for me to be able to live in here safely. So we just did the very bare minimum to make it habitable, and through the kind donations I've received online here, it was possible for some money to be transferred to the work people involved in doing that, and then them to give the various people a little bit of cash to enable. They would do it for their own offering of dana and generosity. But for things like materials, you don't really want to see people out of pocket. So very small amounts like that, this is how that works. But when you look at big, grandiose, big palaces that are temples, these aren't owned by the monks, or they're just the monks are living in probably very modest accommodation in the grounds of such places. They are built and used and for the benefit of the lay practitioners visiting those places and temples, and for suitable places for the monks to go and meet them, give them Dharma talks, practice meditation with them, and so on. So it doesn't work as it does within, say, the Catholic Church or the Church of England, which has huge funds and reserves and owns property all over the place. It isn't like that in Buddhism. Now, that isn't to say there aren't exceptions to the rule. But as far as the Vinaya is concerned, monks do not handle or use money, you see. That's just, when we say monks, we're referring to the Sangha, and that includes monks and nuns. And those that are in breach of one of the main precepts, which actually specifically says handling gold and silver. But bearing in mind that was the money of the time of the Buddha. It's not literally meant to be gold and silver. It can, I think, fairly be considered to be use of money. So what you're requesting there is never likely to happen. But I reply and answer the question just to get rid of any doubt, because you can easily compare when you see some of the big golden lying Buddha temples and all of the tourists going in and out and donating money, think that there's a whole load of rich monks living there. Not at all. Each and every monk is the same as me, with just 3 robes and a bowl and 1 meal a day and no money in their pockets, because we don't even have pockets. So that is all there for you, the lay people, to enjoy and celebrate Buddhism and assist with your practice in Buddhism. So it's good, it's not bad, it's there. But it's not the monks for their privileges. They live very simply, simple lives. So if this is a short question, let me see if I can see the time with my dodgy eyes. Yes, it's probably time to sort of finish. What can you tell us about, I think I will leave that one, Sati Sampajana, or Sampajana it says, during the day, and the effects of lust in the mind. Well, I'll give you the short answer, and I'll go into it in more detail in the next talk. So stay tuned, keep watching. But my short answer is, well, be mindful during all of your daily activities and know when lust arises. This whole practice is to know and let go. But I will expand on the subject of Sati Sampajana, which is mindfulness in everything we do, in the next talk. But until then, thank you for watching. Be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.